AT THE SOMME, UNDER THE TRICOLOUR by Mary Borden Turner, 1886 1968. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read for LibriVox by Phil Shempf. Where is Jehovah? Where is Jehovah, the God of Israel, with his ark and his tabernacle and his pillars of fire? He ought to be here. This place would suit him. Here is a people pouring through a wilderness. Here are armies camping in a desert. Their little tents are like sheep flocking over the prairie. It's all in the style of the God of Israel. Here is a land that was silent and desolate, suddenly covered with noise and confusion. The wide white plains and shallow gray valleys are smeared over with the disorder of armies. Picardy is shaking with a fever. Picardy's hills are wounded and broken. Picardy's fields are scarred as with smallpox. What a chance for his prophets! What a playground for miracles! A host of men at the end of their strength, fighting death, fighting terror, with no one to worship. He need but lift his finger. Here are all his pet properties ready to hand: the thunder, the lightning, the clouds, and the fire. This is his hour, but Jehovah has missed it. This is not his thunder, nor his lightning. These are not his people. These are the armies of France and of England. The thunder is the thunder of their guns, and the lightning that runs along the horizon is the flare and the flash of the battle that's raging. Moses is dead, and Joshua, who led his people into the promised land, is dead. And there are no more prophets to cry through the wilderness to comfort these people. They must look after themselves. All the host of them, each one of them, quite alone, each one of them, every one of the 100,000 of them, alone, must stand up to meet the war. With the sky cracking, with creatures of wide metal wings tearing the sky over his head, with the earth shaking, with the solid earth under his feet giving way, with the hills covered with fire and valleys smoking, and the few bare trees spitting bullets, and the long roads like liquid torrents, rolling up with guns and munitions and men, always men and more men, with these long roads rolling up like a river to drown him, and no way of escape. With the few houses broken, no walls, no enclosure, no protection. With all of the universe crushing upon him, rain, sun, cold, dark, death, coming full on him. With the men near him going mad, gibbering, bleeding, twisting, with his comrade lying dead under his feet. With the enemy beyond there, unseen, curious, with eternity waiting, whispering to him through the noise of the cannon. With the memory of his home haunting him, and the face of a woman who is waiting. With the soft echo of his children's sweet laughter sounding, and shells bursting with roars near him, but not drowning those voices. He stands there. He keeps on standing. He stands solid. He is so small in the landscape as to be almost invisible. We see him as a speck there. He is dirty. He is tired. His stomach is empty. He is stupid. His life has been stupid. He has lived a few years without understanding. He does not understand now. He will never understand. He is bigger than all the world. He is more important than all the army. He is more terrible than all the war. He stands there. But where is Jehovah, the God of the great drama, the God of vengeance, the Lord of hosts? Here the scene is set for his acting: a desert, a promised land, a nation in agony waiting. Jehovah's not here. There's only a man standing, quite still. The Song of the Mud. This is the song of the mud, the pale yellow glistening mud that covers the naked hills like satin, the gray, gleaming, silvery mud that is spread like enamel over the valleys, the frothing, squirting, spurting, liquid mud that gurgles along the road beds, the thick, elastic mud that is kneaded and pounded and squeezed under the hoofs of horses, the invincible, inexhaustible mud of the war zone. This is the song of the mud, the uniform of the poilu. His coat is of mud, his poor, great, flapping coat that is too big for him and too heavy. His coat that once was blue, and now is gray and stiff with the mud that cakes it. This is the mud that clothes him. His trousers and boots are of mud, and his skin is of mud. And there is mud in his beard. His head is crowned with a helmet of mud, and he wears it, oh, he wears it well. He wears it as a king wears the ermine that bores him. He has set a new style in clothing. He has introduced the chic of the mud. This is the song of the mud that wiggles its way into battle. The impertinent, the intrusive, the ubiquitous, the unwelcome, the slimy, inveterate nuisance that fills the trenches, that mixes in with the food of the soldiers, that spoils the working of motors and crawls into their secret parts, that spreads itself over the guns, that sucks the guns down and holds them fast in its slimy, voluminous lips, that has no respect for destruction and muzzles the bursting of shells, and slowly, softly, easily, soaks up the fire, the noise, soaks up the energy and the courage, soaks up the power of armies, soaks up the battle, just soaks it up and thus stops it. This is the song of the mud, the obscene, the filthy, the putrid, the vast liquid grave of our armies. It has drowned our men. Its monstrous distended belly reeks with the undigested dead. Our men have gone down into it, sinking slowly and struggling and slowly disappearing. Our fine men, our brave, strong, young men, our glowing, red, shouting, brawny men, slowly, inch by inch, they have gone down into its darkness, its thickness, its silence. Relentlessly it drew them down, sucking them down. They have been drowned there in thick, bitter, heaving mud. It hides them, oh, so many of them. Under its smooth, glistening surface it is hiding them blandly. There is not a trace of them. There is no mark where they went down. The mute, enormous mouth of the mud has closed over them. This is the song of the mud, the beautiful, glistening, golden mud that covers the hills like satin, the mysterious, gleaming, silvery mud that is spread like enamel over the valleys. Mud, the fantastic disguise of the war zone. Mud, the extinguishing mantle of battles. Mud, the smooth, fluid grave of our soldiers. This is the song of the mud. The Hill. From the top of the hill I looked down upon the marvelous landscape of the war, the beautiful, the romantic landscape of the superb, exulting war. The crests of the wide, surging hills were golden, and the red tents clustered on their naked sides were like flowers in a shining desert of hills. It was evening. The long, shallow valley was bathed in blue shadow, and through the shadow, as if swimming, I saw the armies moving. The long convoys of their motors passed down the road, an endless line of mysterious energy rolling, and the troops, spreading over the wide basin of the valley, peopled the wilderness with a phantom host. Campfires gleamed down there. The sun was setting, and against the brilliant sky, along the clear crest of the hills to the west, a regiment of cavalry went filing. A flock of aeroplanes was flying home with a great whirring of proud wings. Dizzy with the marvelous spectacle of the war, I looked down across the rough foreground that dropped away in darkness beneath my feet. A path, the deserted way of peaceful cattle, showed below, beyond the gaping caverns of abandoned trenches, and along the path a German prisoner was coming, driven by a black man on a horse. The black man wore a turban, and he drove the prisoner before him as one drives an animal to market. The German stumbled on, heavily beneath the nose of his captor's horse. I could see the pallid disk of his face thrust forward, and the exhausted lurching of his clumsy body. I could feel the heaviness of his despair. Along the path that he traveled were piles of rubbish, old shell cases and boots, and battered helmets. Two wooden crosses showed, sticking out of the rough ground. As I watched him disappear beneath the hill, it seemed to me that his hate was like a curse crawling through the grave of our nation. But beyond, in the deepening shadow of the valley, the marvelous spectacle of invincible phantom armies moved, as if swimming. And as I watched I heard, through the echoing of the guns, the faint, crying music of bagpipes, the song of an unseen regiment marching. The crests of the surging hills were still golden, and above the slumbering exaltation of the prodigious war, the fragile crescent of the new moon hung serene in the perfect sky. End of At the Somme Under the Tricolour, by Mary Borden Turner, 1886 1968.